welcome you all here and just to say thank you so much for coming out. This is such an important project and initiative, and it's vital to have public input, to have the community input on this. And I'm going to be turning it over to our consultants here in just a few minutes, but I just don't want to lose the moment just again saying thank you. Before you tonight is one of those efforts to gather feedback. It's not the only one that we're going to be having, but what we're going to be talking about are the initial drafts of these documents. And Chad is going to be able to talk much more poetic about this than I will, but I'll just say that the goal of tonight in many ways is to hear from you. If you have questions saying, why is this way? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for the town of Mills River? We want to hear that. We're going to take as much time as we need tonight to make sure that we get your questions answered. And if we're not able to get to them tonight, we're going to make sure that we're going to follow up with you to make sure you get that answer moving forward. So again, this is the first step tonight. I also want to just take a moment and thank the council for their guidance and their leadership in taking this initiative. It's been quite a long process getting you to this stage. Over a year through discussions even to get to this stage. We have a long ways to go. And I also just want to thank the staff for their hard work and diligence on working through all of this technical work and getting us to here tonight. So I'm going to turn it over as a part of this project. Again, it's so big, so broad, we can't do it alone. We're going to do it in-house. So we brought in some consultants, some fantastic consultants to help guide us through this process. Code Right planners. Chad Meadows is here from Code Right, and then Karen Mallow is in the back. She's going to be the one recording us this evening. And so I just want to turn it over to Chad and say thank you again for all of your work, and I'll turn it over now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. If you cannot hear me, let me know. Second thing, most important, bathrooms, out the door, take a right, okay? Just in case. All right. Thank you so much for being here tonight. As Matt said, this is the first of several of these meetings that we will be having. I am Chad Meadows. I am principal of Code Right Planners. I've been drafting development codes for the last 30 years or so. My office is in Durham. I was born in High Point, and that's about all that you need to know about me. Karen is with me. She's also been involved in this project for gosh, I guess we're coming on a year, and she's been a code drafter for 30 years as well. Tonight, we have two things going on, okay? Or three. Number one is a quick 20-minute presentation giving you some background about the project and the draft zoning map, okay? Number two is we're going to try to answer some of the questions that we have gotten from you guys already tonight, okay? Will this be all the questions that we answer? Nope. There's probably many more that we need to address with you guys. I'm going to try to answer the questions that we've received thus far. After we've gone through the list, the stack that we've got, if you have other questions, we'll pass the mic and you can ask your question then. If you're shy and don't want to be on the microphone, that's fine too. By the door on the way out are more white cards where you can post a question and put it in the red box. Our commitment to you is if you give us a question tonight, we will answer it. I don't know that you'll love the answer, but hopefully you will. Certainly, we'll answer the question. We'll answer that in writing, and that'll be on the webpage. I'll talk more about the project webpage in a minute, so that's got all the main information. That's part two, questions. Part three, we've got some stations around the room, okay? A series of maps. All the maps are the same, they don't differ. That is the draft zoning map, the current zoning map, the future land use map. Each of the stations will be staffed by Mr. Malachek, your planning director, myself. There's also a code station in the middle. If you have any questions about what's going to happen to your property or what's in the development code, please go to the station and ask. We've got from 7:45 to 8:30 to answer your questions. And I don't think they'll kick us out if we need to stay longer, so it's really up to you guys. With that, let's get underway. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what a unified development ordinance is. I'll give you a little bit of detail on the project background, and then we'll go over some of the main aspects of the unified development ordinance, where we are in the project, etc. By the way, as Matt mentioned, we're just getting started, okay? The document is not yet drafted. Some of the document is, we have a draft version of, but we have much more work to do, more meetings with you, more meetings with the elected officials. During the open house part, I mentioned the stations. There's a map station in each corner and a code station in the middle of the room. If you have questions about the code or the maps, please go get your questions answered. What's a Unified Development Ordinance? So we're here tonight to talk about the Unified Development Ordinance and the zoning map. The Unified Development Ordinance is the regulatory document that controls the kinds of uses that are allowed, okay, and where they can be located in town, and how they're operated, and the process that the town uses to consider requests to make new land uses. For you folks in the back, there are chairs in the front, and if you want to come and sit, so feel free. Next slide. UDO is a tool for implementing your comprehensive plan. It's a unified document. All of the development regulations that deal with, or all the rules that deal with development are in one place. So zoning, subdivision, landscaping, signage, right? All of those things. Site features, plus streets, transportation, etc., and infrastructure, sewer, water. Also the zoning map. The zoning map is part of the Unified Development Ordinance. The zoning map is the geographic distribution of uses. Where in Mills River would the community like to see different use types? I don't know if you guys remember it or not. Next slide. This document. Do you remember Making Mills River? Closer? Louder? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for telling me. 2.2. Making Mills River is your comprehensive plan. Okay? And this is a document that's supposed to set the future for the community through the year 2040. It's your vision for the future, right? It identifies the various goals and actions that Mills River as a community wants to take to realize its desired future, okay? The future land use map is part of Making Mills River. It's the geographic distribution of where in town we'd like to see the uses that we want to have. Okay, so we have a roadmap, we have a wish list, we have an image of a desired future. That's our future land use map. The zoning map that we prepare is how do we get there? How do we put rules on the ground to make sure that the kinds of development located in the places that we want them and don't locate in places that we don't. Why? Why do we have a plan? Several questions about why. We'll get to that in a minute. Why do we have a plan? So this is a guide for town staff. It's a guide for elected officials. It's also a guide for people who might want to develop in Mills River to explain to them what the expectations are, what's desired, what's not desired. Okay? It's also a tool to help us understand the growth that we all would like to see. If we do get growth and development here in Mills River, do we want it to be sustainable? Do we want it to be resilient? Do we want to protect the environment? Do we want tons and tons of multifamily buildings? We got you. We heard you. The comprehensive plan also helps focus private investment in areas where it's most appropriate, areas that already have infrastructure, areas that are appropriate for development, and seeks to have private infrastructure, private investment avoid areas that aren't appropriate for development. Our ridge tops, our wetlands, our floodplains, our farms, things that we want to keep safe. Finally, protecting property values, open spaces, and community character. If there's one thing we've heard about Mills River, we like the community character. We like our agricultural heritage. We want that stuff protected. We don't want to be a community like somewhere around you. Okay, next slide. So what's the difference between the plan and the UDO? The plan is advisory. It's goals, it's policies. The UDO is the law. Okay, the black letter law about what you can and cannot do with your property. Okay, so the UDO regulates, the plan guides. Obviously, the future land use map is the bridge between those two documents. UDO is the primary tool for implementing the plan. Okay. Let's talk about Imagine Mills River. This is the project name for the development of the new Unified Development Ordinance. Slide. Project goals. These are 6 or 7 concepts that we have developed up to this point. I'll tell you a little bit more about what we've done in this moment. But Obviously protecting community character, right? Implementing Imagine Mills River and other town policy documents. Drafting and set of development regulations that are hopefully easier to use, easier to understand. Protecting the environment, obviously very important. Increasing housing options. Not necessarily more multifamily, more options. Not everybody needs a single family detached home. Some folks need something else. Promoting development quality. If we do get development in Mills River, my gosh, it should be of the highest quality, right? We don't want junk here. Modernizing the uses, okay? 10 years ago, we didn't have things like event centers or data centers or solar farms. None of that stuff existed. 10 years from now, there'll be things that we haven't even dreamed of that we're going to have to be dealing with. This Unified Development Ordinance is one of the tools that we'll use that will manage as technology and progress advances forward. So, here's our work program, okay? There's 7 tasks in this work program. We have a project initiation task. We've done the code diagnosis document. That is a quick analysis of your current regulations in light of the comprehensive plan goals that you have and what changes might be necessary to implement your plan, to be consistent with state law, to be consistent with best practice in terms of regulation, and to implement what we've heard from the community. The annotated outline, task 3, dress rehearsal for the Unified Development Ordinance. What's this thing going to look like? What's in it? How's it structured? That's what the annotated outline includes. We are right now in task 4 at this point. Okay, we are in the initial draft phase. Initial draft, okay? Not the final draft. There'll be a revised draft, okay? So one of the reasons why we're thankful to meet with you guys tonight is that we're getting some feedback from you. Are we headed in the right direction? Do we need to shift gears? Do we need to pivot? This is an opportunity for us to get some feedback from you about whether or not we're headed in the right direction, okay? At a time in the process when there's still enough time to pivot, right? Okay. So once we've got this revised draft, first of the year, first 3 months of 2026, we will then move into the adoption process. That is set for us by the state. Okay, there'll be a meeting with the planning board. There'll be at least 1 meeting with town council, right? And then eventually, hopefully, there'll be an adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance, and then we'll be in delivery. Now, you guys know, there's no secret, we've had some challenges here in North Carolina in terms of local governments and our ability to have zoning ordinances and our ability to make changes to our zoning ordinances here in the state. Mills River is the one community of 700 local governments across the state, the one who was given an exemption from these changes in state law so that this project could be prepared. Okay? There's a question about that, and I'll come to it when we do questions about why that matters and what this is all about. But suffice it to say, time is limited. This document, this exemption that Mills River enjoys, expires. It expires on July 1st, 2026. After that date, some of the flexibility that we have today will evaporate. And that'll be problematic for us. So, we want to get through this thing by July. Mike is telling me to hurry up, so moving on. This slide is the project webpage. Show of hands, how many people have been here? A few. Okay. This webpage has all of the draft document stuff that's been put together up to this point. All of the presentations, all of the material that's been assembled. There are videos. There are frequently asked questions. There are opportunities for you to pose a question to us, to Mike and myself. And we're trying to answer those. There's a place to sign up on the webpage to get updates about when things are happening. Okay? So I encourage you, ImagineMillsRiver.com. Check it out. Everything that relates to this project is there for you, including an opportunity to speak directly to Mike and I through your email. Okay. I talked about the code diagnosis. The key Both of these documents are available for your inspection on the webpage. Please do check them out. The UDO structure. Now, you guys today have development regulations. Okay? They're in your town code of ordinances, and they span about 10 chapters. Okay? There's a zoning chapter, and subdivision chapter, and vested rights chapter, 10 chapters. The Unified Development Ordinance seeks to bring all of that material together, okay, and provide a common voice, a common set of definitions, a lot more illustrations, hopefully something that's a little easier to use, something that's consistent with changes in state law. Lots of good stuff. This slide shows the table of contents for the Unified Development Ordinance. Okay, so you can see that we deal with procedures, we deal with zoning districts, we deal with land uses, okay, we deal with the development standards, what are the rules for parking and landscaping, lighting, signage, etc. Non-conformities, those things that don't conform to the regulation, violations, and then finally definitions. Okay. Deep breath. The document is long. Okay. It will probably be 600 pages. One of the reasons why it's long is because it'll have 100 pages of definitions. It'll have 500 illustrations that don't exist in your code today. It has 140 uses that it deals with. It sets down 34 procedures. Okay? So there's a lot of detailed information here. It's hopefully organized in ways that you can understand, and then we can all agree on what it says. Tonight, we're going to talk about districts, we're going to talk about the map. Okay, those are the important things for us to cover tonight. We'll have at least one more of these. We'll probably talk about the standards. Okay? Tonight, districts and map have the show. So, this is a translation table. There's two key parts to this, and you'll find copies of these around the room. The translation table sets down on the left side all of the current zoning districts. Okay? I know it says former, and it says former because this is intended to be in the document, but those are your current zoning districts. On the right side are the new zoning districts. A couple of things to note. One, they're side by side. Okay? So today's MR-RR, the rural residential district, becomes the rural residential district. Today's MR30 becomes tomorrow's LDR, the low density residential. Okay, so they go across. A couple other things to note. There's some NAs in the current district column. Those are new districts. They don't exist today. They're being made available. The town probably will not lay some of those districts on the ground. They may lay some districts on the ground, but those are new that do not exist today. There's more detail in the maps. There's more detail at the code table, and there's more detail on the web page about the purpose for these districts, dimensional standards, requirements, etc. A couple other things to note. You guys saw the NAs on the new zoning district column. What does that mean? Current districts in there going away. Okay? They're changing. One of those zoning districts that is changing is the mixed use district, the MRMU. 70% of town? 75% of the town is zoned MRMU. MRMU allows a vast array of use types. Vast. MRMU lacks detail on the dimensional requirements. What are the setbacks? What's the density? What's the impervious surface coverage? We don't know. 75% of your land area. We don't know. That's why, one of the reasons why we're doing this, okay, to give some more certainty to landowners about what they can expect in the future. Okay. A couple other things I'll mention. Back one. We've got a series of conditional zoning districts. Ask one of the people at the stations about those. What's a conditional zoning district? Why would I use that? You have them today. They've been in your books for years. There's no land in Mills River that has a conditional zoning district designation, so you've not used them up to this point. They are very much the norm in most communities in North Carolina. Okay, next. This is the use table. If nothing else, I hope you're seeing, I don't know if you've ever looked at your current regulations. I'm sure everybody has. You've got a copy of your current code on the nightstand. You check it out every day. It doesn't look like this. Okay? There's not these summary tables with colors, and it's not laid out to be graphically pleasing and easy to follow. It's wrote to text. Okay? And we're trying to move you guys in a direction where things are a little easier to read, easier to understand, and more information. Okay? This table, there's copies around the room, has the zoning districts across the top and all of the full range of allowable uses down the side. This table stretches for 7 pages. There are a series of tables at the back of the room that have blown-up versions of the use table. You can go and check it out. Okay? So you might have property that is currently MR30, right? It's going to LDR, and you might want to know what uses are going to be allowed in my zoning district, right? You can go back to the table back there and have a look. Okay? We're not wed to anything in those tables. This is an opportunity for you guys to share with us whether you agree or disagree with what's being suggested. Okay, that's why we're having a meeting, is to share with you this is what we think. Not what we know, what we think. Okay? Next slide. Zoning map. Copies around the room. Some of you have already taken a chance to look at them. This is the draft zoning map. It is not the final zoning map. It's not even the second or third map. It's the first map. I say that because there's going to be a second map. There's going to be a third map. One of the reasons why we wanted to have you guys in here was to get your feelings about the first map. This is the right. This is the wrong. What needs to be changed? Okay? That's why we're here. It's to hear from you guys about it. Now, there's a legend there. Those zoning districts correspond with the uses of the districts in the use table. So you should be able to find your property, what your zoning district is going to be. At the code table is more detail about what those zoning districts are proposed for. Each of the map stations have a methodology that we use to translate the maps from the current zoning districts to the proposed zoning districts. And you can find out what range of uses are allowed in the district, where you're located, or that you're interested in. Okay. Believe it or not, there was some method to our madness in terms of how we translated the zoning districts from what's current to what's proposed. Okay? This detail is also found on the maps, on the walls at each of the mapping stations. Essentially, we made these decisions based on 2 or 3 concepts. One is size. How big are the lots that exist? 2, what's there today? Okay? Is it vacant? Is it a house? Is it a farm? 3, what does the future land use map say? Remember the future land use map? What we want to be when we grow up? We spend time checking in with that, making sure that we're being consistent with what the community said and wanted. Okay, next slide. MRMU. Remember that one? 75% of the land area in town is MRMU. This is how we changed those properties that are currently MRMU. 75% of you in the room probably have this zoning district, so this probably affects you. There's information about what you went to based on lot size, or what kind of use type you had, or where you were in the community. Okay? So, that's it. We have more to talk about in the coming days and weeks. But first, let's do some questions, because you guys gave us a lot of questions. In fact, I don't even have all of them. I have some of them. So I'm going to attempt to answer some of these. This is like Jeopardy in reverse. And if I mess it up, Mike's going to help me. Okay? Mike Malachek is planning director, knows way more about Mills River than I do. Okay. So, question 1, what is by right housing? Right? We talked in this code diagnosis, we talked in the draft code about more by right housing. What does that mean? That means housing that can be established on somebody's property without having to go through a rezoning. Okay? It's a housing typology that would be allowed by right, subject to standards. Okay? How many units I can have on the lot, what kind of materials I might use for that development, how tall it that sort of thing. There are always rules. Okay? So by right housing, I can establish it without any zoning. What is accessory dwelling unit? Okay. So, how many of you guys heard of what do they call it? A granny flat?
In-law suite.
The garage apartment, right? I have a 21-year-old in college, so I will soon be one of those people with my son in the basement or a garage apartment. It is a second dwelling unit on the same piece of property as a principal dwelling, and that can be used to house a family member. It can be used to rent to somebody who doesn't live there. I can use it as gathering space. It is accessory. That means it's smaller, it's less intense, it's owned by the same person, and it's on the same lot as a principal dwelling. Okay? That's what an accessory dwelling unit is. And we are looking to distinguish between accessory dwelling units that are entirely within a single family home, okay, versus accessory dwelling units that are in a detached structure. If you look at the secondary use standards in chapter 4, you will see a lot of detail about what the proposed standards for new accessory dwelling units might be. Okay? Any questions? All right. How quickly might we expect enacting this ordinance? Good question. You guys remember the date that I threw out earlier? July 1st, 2026 is when this development ordinance needs to be adopted. Is that the end of it? Will it ever change after that? Yes. It's a living document. Okay? The General Assembly changes the planning and enabling legislation for local governments every single year. Every year, at least once, you'll need to revise this Unified Development Ordinance, if for no other reason than to maintain compliance with state law. Now, will we get it right? Probably not. Nobody's perfect, right? The idea behind this new UDO is that it's better than what you got today, that it's flexible enough to accommodate the things that come along, and that we all agree that if something's not working right, we're going to open it up and fix it. We're going to change it so that it does work right. Okay? All right. This is my favorite question. Why? Why? Why are we doing this? Okay. Here's why. One, you adopted a new comprehensive plan. Okay? You guys adopted a new comprehensive plan. Okay? Thank you. I'll try to do better. The comprehensive plan needs to be implemented. Right? The UDO is the main tool that the town uses to implement its comp plan. But that's not the only reason. Okay? There's a couple of other important reasons. Remember when I was talking about that MRMU district, the one that occupies 75% of the land area here in town? The one that has lots and lots of different use types and no dimensional requirements? There was a recent change in state law that bars local governments from making changes in their development regulations that would lower densities, that would reduce the range of allowable uses, or that would create non-conforming situations on existing non-residential lots. Okay? Before June 14th of this year, every local government in North Carolina could, through its legislative discretion, its elected officials, could change the rules to lower densities, to reduce the range of allowable uses, to write new development standards that had higher expectations of existing non-residential development. That ability existed on June 13th, 2024. After June 14th, 2024, it no longer exists. That has been taken away from you, all local governments. Now, if you go out and you get consent from all affected parties, then you may have a text amendment that lowers densities, reduces the range of uses, or creates nonconformities in non-residential districts. Now, why am I talking about this? MRMU allows a wide range of uses. It has no dimensional requirements, very few for us to work with. this law interferes with your ability to render control over 75% of your land area. Okay? This bill stops you from doing that. Mills River, one community in North Carolina, 700 who got a reprieve from this bill so that we can finish this project and help Mills River control its future. Okay? That's why. That's why. Okay. What percentage of the Mills River town residents asked for rezoning? How was this input collected? So to my knowledge, nobody asked for rezoning. Now, as we move through this process, we might see some town residents asking for rezoning. That would be typical, that would be common, and it would probably be appropriate. Okay? Once you've had a chance to look at a map, you might say to yourself, oh my gosh, Chad, this doesn't make any sense to me. Why did you give me this zoning district? I'd like to have something else. Okay, that's why we had a meeting. That's why we're here. That's why we'll be talking in the future. All right? So, might you consider asking for a different zoning district designation in the future? Yes. And that would be appropriate and common. Okay? How was this? So, did anybody ask for this now? Answer? No. Okay. We were asked to look at your comprehensive plan, work with your staff, understand the legal conditions that exist, put something on the table for you guys to consider. And that's what we started to do. And we're here to talk about what we've got. Not because we're right, but because we want to know what you think. Okay. Great question. Okay. Good question. Why has the town not sent postcards to all residents? Put up signs like the taxes due signs. Can we have a town vote? It's a good question. So, I have it on good authority that the town is exploring doing postcards. We'll be doing this to let everybody know about this process, because this isn't something that should happen in the dark. We want people to know about it. We want people to come to these meetings and tell us what they think. Can we have a town vote? Is this person from New England? In New England, they have these town hall meetings, and everybody gets to vote. That's not how we do it in North Carolina. You've got elected officials, and they're the ones who vote for you. That's how it works in North Carolina. The UDO will be adopted by your elected officials. Their vote, not yours. You vote for them, and they vote for you. How can the rural character be protected? That's a great question. We can protect rural character by requiring new development to not be visible. We can protect rural character by sending development to the areas that already have infrastructure or that are least impactful on the rural character that we have. We can protect rural character by requiring more open space, adding new tree protection standards, requiring non-residential development to be configured to look certain ways, to ask residential development to be located and clustered in areas that we can't see it from our neighborhood, from the nearby road. Okay? So a lot of strategies out there for us. You guys probably have some ideas you'd like to share about how best to do that. I know that folks want to say we don't want any more development. We've got enough. We don't want any more. I would certainly understand that position. Unfortunately, people buy property. They have property rights. If you want to stop development, you can buy the property. Okay? And that may be something that you want to do. Some communities do that. We have options for protecting rural character. We intend to use those. Can a property owner request their parcel remain mixed use? Remember, that's that MRMU district, one that we are suggesting abolition of. The answer to the question is, I'm afraid not. Hopefully, there are some other suitable zoning opportunities or options out there for those folks who want to have mixed use or want to have that flexibility. Remember that conditional zoning thing I mentioned earlier? That's a great opportunity for anybody to come in and request more flexibility if they'd like to take advantage of that. Okay? Wow, good question. Can you explain all the zoning districts so all understand their differences. Yes, I love this stuff. I live for it, and I'd be happy to talk to you guys all night about it. You probably don't want to hear me talk about it all night long. There are kind of 3 or 4 groups of districts. We have a conservation district that we're adding. Okay? It's a new district that doesn't exist today. The conservation district is intended to conserve, right? Don't develop there. That's something we want kept as it is. There's a series of 4 residential districts, okay? And they're organized by intensity. We've had a lot of discussion about the names. We got the memo on them. People don't like the AGR name. Understood. We're working on it. We're trying to come up with the right names for your districts. But there are 4. There is a continuum of intensity or density from low to high. Okay? The agricultural residential district has lots that are 3 acres in size or larger. Okay? The most intense zoning district, the mixed residential, allows lots that are 30,000 square feet. Okay? There are 3 non-residential districts. Okay? There's a general commercial for along the highways. All right? There's an industrial, because you guys actually have industrial development here in town, which is great for you because they help pay your taxes. And we're suggesting a town center be added. Maybe not the best name in the world, because it's not really a town center, but it is a place where buildings are clustered together. Hopefully you can drive there, park, get out of your car, and walk from one building to another, or meet your neighbors. There's the 4 conditional zoning districts. There's a residential, commercial, industrial, and mixed use. And then there's a couple of overlay districts. Those overlay districts are environmental in nature. Okay? There's one called the water supply watershed overlay. That's for protecting drinking water. It's a state law. It limits density. It limits the range of uses. It limits, it limits impervious surface. We also have a special area overlay or a floodplain overlay. That's what that is. That's the floodplain. You guys just went through a process to adopt new regulations for your special flood hazard area here in Mills River. So we're carrying forward that language. It's not new. That's a quick bird's eye listing of all of the zoning districts. At 7:45, you've got an opportunity to come and speak to one of us, Michael, myself, someone else, and get your questions answered about the other zoning districts. This question is also good. Will current uses be grandfathered? Does everybody understand what the word grandfather means?
Yes.
It's not the greatest word in the world, but the concept is I existed before you changed the rules, so I shouldn't have to follow those rules. Okay, that's the basis of the grandfathering rule. Will current uses be grandfathered? Yes. Current uses be able to continue as long as you're not in violation of the ordinance, which I'm sure no one in here is. Your current uses will be able to continue unaffected. Okay? Your current uses able to continue unaffected. If you choose to make a change on your property, maybe then you might have to come into compliance. Maybe you want to do an addition. Maybe you want to rezone your property. Maybe you want to have a different use type. Whatever it is. At that point, yes, the rules of the UDO will come into play for you. Okay? But you got what you got. You get to keep it. You can keep it forever. In fact, we're softening those rules, making it easier for you to keep what you have now without having to change. Okay?
Would you put the mic closer, please?
Can we turn this up? Is it possible? So this microphone is like, I need that Gene Rayburn. Does everybody know who Gene Rayburn is? It should have a line. I will try to do better with the microphone. This is how will this affect my current property? Answer that question. This is why are we doing this now? I'll explain that. Here's a good question. When will the draft language be available for us to look at? Great question. Right now on the web page is the annotated outline. Remember me talking about that? It's the dress rehearsal for the UDO. It sets down the organization of the document. It has detail on all of the main sections. It's not the black letter line law of the new UDO, but it's darn close to it. That is available for you to look at today. We have a steering committee that is reviewing the draft language for half of the zoning ordinance. We are presenting that information to town council tomorrow. I would expect that the draft language would be available for people to look at a couple of weeks. Okay. Go to the webpage. What's the webpage address? ImagineMillsRiver.com. Thank you. Good. What is the position of the city council members that will vote and put this proposal through? I don't know. I was hoping you guys would know. We've had meetings with them and will continue to have meetings with them. They direct us. We listen to what they tell us, and we try to draft the regulations in ways that comply with what they've asked for. Okay? We tell them what we heard from you. Okay? So they get to hear you to us and yourselves. I know you guys see these folks. This was already asked. Can a landowner request their land in MXR? Well, this actually is a little bit different question. Okay. Go back to the table. MXR, mixed residential. It's a new zoning district. We did lay it on the ground in some places. Okay? Areas that are currently neighborhood commercial got the MXR district. Some areas that were mixed use got the MXR district. If you're one of the folks who didn't get the MXR district, but you might like to have it, tonight's your night. You need to tell us, okay, I live here. Here's the zoning district that you gave me. I'd like to request that you give me MXR. And we'll take that on board, okay? Do we get to decide? No. Who gets to decide? Town council. They're the ones who get to decide this. Remember, they go through you. Okay? Absolutely, you can request a different zoning district designation. You can do that tonight. You can do it tomorrow. You can do it on Friday. At the table, by the door, is a sign-in sheet for office hours. Okay? Big on these things. Office hours are a chance for you to come into town hall and talk directly to myself and Karen with your requests. Okay? Meetings are 30 minutes. You got to sign up. Okay, so you contact town staff, they'll get you on the calendar, and we'll be happy to meet with you. So, I encourage you to avail yourself of that opportunity. Right. You can also reach out to staff. Talk to them about what kind of zoning districts you might like to have. There's also the webpage, right? There's places at the bottom you can post comment. If you want us to get back to you, you need to give us your email. Okay? All right. Will you keep our floodplains from being filled in? The answer is no, because you already have. You have a new special hazard area overlay zoning district that bars development in your floodplain. It's already on the books. We will be carrying it forward. Okay? So, we won't be, but you already have. Will you protect our mountain ridges from being developed? Great question. We do anticipate inclusion of new hilltop and ridge compatibility protection standards. Okay? Can we stop development from happening on the mountain ridges? Yep, we sure can. How do we do it? We buy the land! If we're not going to buy the land, somebody owns that land. They've got a right to develop it. Now, we can ask them to develop in ways that don't negatively impact our rights to live in a rural community, to be in a valley and look up at the ridges. Okay? So we can try to find a balance there. We do anticipate some standards for mountaintops, hilltops, and ridge lines. Just to have a chance to see those. Will you stop mass grading? I tried to stop it. I'm part of a 10-step program. Mass grading is where we come in and we do a bunch of cut and fill, a bunch of changes. We have standards for limiting mass grading. We have the authority to limit mass grading. So, not now. Okay. Let's explore limitations of mass grading. I agree with you, whoever wrote this question. Should we stop mass grading? Yes. I agree with you. What needs to happen for that is stuff we need to continue to discuss. Will you protect our night skies? So you have a lighting ordinance. Changed recently. 2 years ago? Adopted 2 years ago. It's for exterior lighting, and the intention is to limit light trespass, limit glare, try to make sure that the night sky is protected. Can we go farther? Yes, if you want to. That's something that you ask us, or ask your elected officials. Hey, we really want a dark sky ordinance. Okay? That's stuff that can be done. But nothing is free in this world, right? There are some potential downsides to dark sky ordinances. Like what? Parking lots are dark. Dark parking lots are sometimes not safe places to be. So that's something to factor into our decision making. So think about how to do this night sky stuff. If you want to advocate for dark skies, please do so. Say something to me, say something to Mike, say something to the webpage. The more people talk about this, the more likely it is that it will ascend up into the areas that we're changing. Good question. Question is, will Mills River disallow a data center? It requires enormous amounts of water. Absolutely true. It does require just unbelievable amounts of water. Hundreds of thousands of gallons every day. Further, and perhaps more importantly, is how much electricity they require. Why that matters, my friends, is because you, as ratepayers, get to pay for the infrastructure upgrades necessary to serve the data center. Thanks, Jeff. So, we are in the process of writing data center limitation rules for numerous governments across the state, and we're happy to incorporate those in your regulation if you want. You have some now that control the amount of noise. 70 decibels in the day, 60 decibels at night, maybe 90 in the day. Some of these regulations that we're working on today have additional requirements to specify where the electricity is coming from, and more regulations for these kinds of things. Can we incorporate that? Yes. If you'd like to see that, be sure to put that on the webpage. Be sure to ask me, ask your elected officials. Unbelievable penmanship. Does the results of the Mills River decision on zoning have to be approved by the NC General Assembly before it can be installed? Answer, no. Does have to be approved by your town council. Can it be changed by the General Assembly and changed through amendment? That's a loaded question. So, can the document be changed by amendment? Yes, by your elected officials, absolutely. It's in their legislative discretion and their purview to adopt, change your development regulations. Can the General Assembly reach in to your UDO and change it? Yes, they can. Hopefully they won't. We'll be sure to write it in ways that don't draw their attention. After approval, can it be changed later by the North Carolina General Assembly? And the answer is yes, it can. It doesn't happen often, but it's certainly possible and has happened in other communities. We'll try to write it in ways that doesn't happen. All right, I have 3 more questions, and one of them was why? My favorite. was there not more outreach to the residents? So many have no idea we are here. Yard signs, postcards, awareness. Where was the investment for public knowledge? We have given have over 7,500 residents. Where are they? Not here, because they are clueless, unacceptable, exclamation point. It's true, not everybody can come to these things, wants to come to these things, knows about these things, right? We put together a website. Town does its social media. We do everything we can to make sure that people are aware of this. At the end of the day, the burden falls down partially on the people who live here. You need to tell your neighbors, hey, that guy with red hair is coming to town. Come to the meeting and tell them what you think. Or, here's the webpage. Write something. So we ask you to help us. The town will do a mailing, and they've decided to do that, which is great. We will have more of these. And now everybody in this room knows that we have a webpage, and that I've asked you to tell at least one neighbor about what you heard tonight and how they should get involved. How were conservation areas determined? Why so few in the draft? Great question. The zoning map identifies a handful of conservation areas that are dark green. Right now, the only lands that have the conservation zoning district designation are ones that are owned by the town. We do anticipate adding into those all of the lands that are subject to a conservation easement, or at least the ones that we're able to find out about. If you know of a land here in town that is subject to a conservation easement or deed restriction that doesn't allow development and should be in conservation, please tell us so that we can put it on the map. Okay. How are we doing time? 7:07. This is supposed to go till 7:45, so we got lots of time. And Mike can pass out the microphone if you don't want to write down a question. If, by the way, we get through all the questions that we have, we will break early and we'll go to stations and folks can do one-on-one questions. Okay? All right. Why would the town want to spot zone? And not just put the same restrictions on all parcels? It's a good question. So, why would we want to spot zone? We wouldn't. In fact, believe it or not, it's against the law to spot zone. We try to avoid spot zoning where we can. Now, some zoning districts allow us to quote-unquote spot zone. By the way, spot zoning means I've got one piece of property that has a particular zoning district designation, and it's different from all the other properties around it. Or maybe it's a cluster of properties that have a very different zoning designation. There's an industrial site, smack dab in the middle of a residential neighborhood. That's an example of spot zone. That's not good. You don't want that. Try to avoid it. Sometimes you can't, depending upon what's on the ground today, or what vested rights exist, or what got approved 10 years ago. We don't want a spot zone. Not just put the same restrictions on all parcels. Well, some parcels are residential, some parcels are commercial, some are industrial. And the rules that we write for those should be different, right? We don't need density limitations for industrial land. You can't do residential and industrial land. We don't need loading standards for single-family neighborhood lots because they don't have loading facilities. So we do want to recognize the uses, and that's why the standards are a little bit different. My guess is this question might pertain to density. I'm not sure. And if it does, come up to me later and ask me to talk about density. What exactly does promoting sustainable development and property values mean? This is one of the goals of the UDO. Okay. Promoting sustainable development, right? That's development that has a lower ecological footprint or impact on the environment. It doesn't create as much stormwater. It doesn't put as much carbon in the air. It's more, it does a better job with energy management. It doesn't waste energy. It's not susceptible to flooding, or it's less susceptible to flooding. It's more walkable. Okay, you don't have to get in a car as much to travel around. That's what promoting sustainable development is. Property value protection, or sustainable property value, right? Everybody wants to be able to sell their house for more than they pay for it. Yes? Show of hands, who doesn't? Anybody not wanting to sell it for more? Of course not. We want to support property values. We want to increase property values. We want to do things that will allow people to sell their house or their business for more than they bought it for. It's the American way, right? We understand that. Writing development regulations that promote development quality, that raise all boats, that help support and sustain property values are an important part of this project. And so that's what that means. Will the existing business that are grandfathered in conforming or non-conforming? Okay. Now remember, you heard me say earlier, 3 times, existing properties are unaffected. This question says, will existing businesses that are grandfathered be conforming or non-conforming? Everybody, if the strategy that we have drafted is accepted by your elected officials, on the effective date of your ordinance, all existing development that is not subject of a violation becomes conforming. Okay? Becomes conforming. Not necessarily because we're altruistic and want to make that very easy. Rather, it's a very practical decision. Because of what the General Assembly did with respect to non-conforming creation, those local governments who have nonconformities after a text amendment have to track them. There's 2 different flavors of nonconformity. Those that existed before your text amendment that you didn't have to get consent for, and those that were created after your tax amendment that you did have to get consent for. Okay? Local governments would have to track that forever. I'm pretty sure that you'd rather have your staff serving you than tracking who gave you consent or who didn't. So, to solve that problem, we are granting amnesty to every lawfully established use and property in Mills River as part of the adoption of this ordinance. You will get to keep what you have forever. You will get to replace it in kind forever. Okay. You want to change it, you gotta comply. You gotta comply with the rules. You gotta comply with the rules in place at the time you request the change. So in that way, you're in the driver's seat. Okay? You want to be subject to the rules, propose a change. You don't, you develop like it is. Okay? That's the strategy. Now, the ultimate decision about whether or not we go down that road is up to you. Town council. That's right. But that is our strategy. Will those whose property becomes rezoned on 280 be compensated for a loss in value? That's a good question. Generally speaking, legislative actions are not always subject to monetary compensation. So says the Supreme Court. Now, those folks who bring a case to court and can prove to the judge that they've suffered a taking in value are entitled to just compensation. How much and when is up to the judge. Generally speaking, legislative discretion of local governments allows them to change the zoning map in ways that don't require payment of just compensation. Right? That's the law in North Carolina. And we're not anticipating payments to folks who have property on 280 that might have some sort of change or adjustment in the range of allowable uses that are there. We did and do suggest that we have a wider range of allowable uses that we have a handful of flexibility techniques to allow those people to recover the value of their property, that we allow a broader range of allowable use types subject to standards. So, it's hoped that there's a balance. Yes, there might be some changes to uses. Yes, there might be some changes to standards. But that sort of cuts both ways. And those changes might help you as much as you perceive them might hurt you. Okay? But you won't know until you read the book. You won't know until you're familiar with the standards. These are all questions that I have. Does anybody have a question? Mr. Malachek would be.
So can I just ask that timing, which you just covered? So in other words, you can keep what you have, right? So if I have my house and then something changes, I'm gonna turn it, that's okay, right? But let's say somebody has bought a property they want to develop and they started, you know, but it's not within the new zoning. I mean, how does that timing work? What has to be done? What has to be old for the new?
Right. How do we manage the things that are already in process, right? Because we didn't just stop time. Stuff's going on, right? We've got applications in various stages of review. Some folks have filed applications that are not complete. Some applications have been determined complete, but we haven't started the decision-making process. Some are in the decision-making process but haven't finished. Some have been decided but haven't started. Some have started but haven't finished. What do we do? Answer. Everybody who is underway with their development, including those with a complete application, at the effective date of the new UDO, get to keep what they had, keep what they were approved to have. Okay? If you have a complete application, when the new UDO stops. I'm sorry? We're not sure yet. We know it's going to be before July 1st of 2026. Not sure the exact date. That will be set by the town council when the public hearing is over. But our deadline to get our work done for you is no later than June 30th of 2026. So the question was, would it be prudent for town council to pause all approvals while we're in this process? Some local governments do that, most don't. One of the measures of success for us, frankly, is when we write an ordinance and people who already have a development approval withdraw it because they want to go forward under the new ordinance because it's better for them. Okay? And in that regard, this matter takes care of itself. The ultimate decision about whether or not they want to have a moratorium on development applications rests solely with the elected officials. There are laws. Okay, so first off, and sadly, in North Carolina, you may not have a moratorium on residential development, period. That is no longer allowed. You cannot do it. You can have a moratorium on non-residential development. Okay? And there's some rules about how that is structured, how long it can be. But no moratorium on residential development. Talk to your state senator, your state representative. So, would it be effective? I don't know. My guess is that most of the concern, part of the folks who live here, is about a lot of incoming residential development. Yes? All right.
Other questions?
Thank you for the penmanship comment on that a lot of time. I liked your answer. It is a truthful answer. But it kind of concerns me too with this. So my understanding, this is not a state house vote. The assembly won't vote on what we come up with. But they can change it if they need to. And
If they wish to.
and we've seen that a lot. I have at national, working at national as long as I have. But the other thing I just wanted to mention was the water. We're building more for Asheville to Asheville Water, Mills River plant, whatever. And we've seen enough water here lately, but in the summer, it dries up. And the more we get in here, especially businesses, it dries up. And we ain't got no choices. And the French Broad runs all the way through Mills River as well, so if they're gonna draw out of here, but what do we have to say, this is the amount of water you can have, and to change it if it dries up?
Good question. And in the spirit of being honest with you, I don't know. I think that the amount of water draw is controlled by the state, whether it's EQ or some other agency, some other alphabet agency. I don't know. I am sure that unless that draw belongs to Mills River, or that those, if you had wells or something like that, you have more control over it. What's drawn out of the French Broad, I don't. You have any control over that. That's permitted to the state. So I don't know. It's a good question.
Others?
First of all, thank you for being here this evening. I have an awful long question. With all the zoning and all the maps being done and all the potential facilities, I'll call them, or buildings and structures and so on, what would be the maximum amount of people that would occupy all these spaces in Mills River?
Wow, good question. Another one I don't know. You guys are, I guess we'll get into the stumpers.
Are there studies that are available?
So there are local governments who do these demand capacity analyses that contemplate, okay, if we have this zoning, how many houses is that, and what's our average persons per household unit, and we can sort of back into some general information about what we could expect as, quote, build out, which is the situation that you're talking about. That exercise is done as part of comprehensive planning. It's not something that we do typically as part of zoning ordinances. I don't know if a build-out analysis was conducted for Mills River as part of making Mills River. You might decide that that's something you want to explore, whether you want to do it under your current zoning or you'd like to explore that under the proposed zoning. The challenge is it's sometimes difficult to know. There's a lot of assumptions that get built into those analyses. Which lots are going to be developed by when? Will they be developed to their maximum allowable density or less? These build-out analyses are always kind of worst-case scenario. And that's one of the weaknesses of those kinds of things. It's a helpful tool, but...
Well, the other tool would probably be how much revenue would you gain in all these operations as you get to certain levels?
Right.
Point, and I know that's probably the same answer. What about streets and infrastructure and things? Are those all part of the map now based on some resemblance? Or if you build the infrastructure and you don't have available streets and so forth, then you have issues?
Indeed. So the UDO does talk about streets, sidewalk, water, sewer, okay, infrastructure. Mills River isn't in that game, right? I think the town owns half mile, 1 mile, half mile, 1 mile of street. A lot of local governments in North Carolina own, hundreds of miles of street, and they maintain it, and they have control over it, and they require new development to pay for it when new development comes in. Existing residents pay to maintain it as part of their property taxes. Now, we anticipate adding some standards for private roads. There's always the NCDOT roads, okay? Because roads in a community are going to be one of 3 flavors. They're either going to be municipal, owned by the town. They're going to be owned by DOT. They're going to be private. That's it, right? Right now, and going forward, I think this is as much a question for your elected officials as it is for anybody else. I think the town's sense of it is they'll continue to utilize DOT owned and maintained streets and private streets. I don't know how much of the business of public street maintenance and ownership the town is interested in getting into. So that's a policy question for your elected officials. We do expect to that require better connected streets, safer streets, better access, whether that's a DOT street or a private street.
But the zoning does not incorporate any of that infrastructure in the future.
Not really, no.
It just takes what you have now, applies it to.
It does. It sets down some rules for new development. We expect you to have driveways this wide, or we want you to have roadways that are this wide, or we want you to have sidewalks. Those are things that the zoning ordinance does do. But, you know, investment in roadways, capital expenditures in roads, that's not what the zoning ordinance does. Not at all.
One thing that's in our zoning ordinance now that does contribute to that is our traffic study code. So if there's a development that's going to be generating a lot of traffic, like this new warehouse development across from the school here, you're going to have to do a study and basically prove to the town and to NCDOT, the state transportation agency, that you're not having an adverse impact on the local transportation network. And so these folks over here building this warehouse, because there's going to be truck traffic coming down here, we actually were able to make them, through our partnership with DOT, improve the intersection of Banner Farm and Haywood Road. So there are, in the zoning code, there are ways to get local improvements when a development's expected to negatively impact that, but the other state road improvements, that really falls to the State Department of Transportation. Other questions?
Well, he's walking back there. More things like this? It's helpful? It's good use of time? Yes? Okay.
I'd like to thank you for your effort you put into this situation here, because it seems pretty extensive. I'd also like to ask if there's any intention or any plans, maybe whatever, to create a downtown Mills River. So I'd like to, hey, let's go downtown. Where are you gonna go?
The use is downtown. So the question was, is there a plan as part of this effort to establish a downtown for Mills River? The answer to that question is not really. We are anticipating, if you look on the zoning maps at this, when we go into the breaking up into the stations, you'll see two areas that are zoned town center. Sort of downtown, kind of sort of, but you got two. In recognition of existing development patterns. One's right at the highway interchange, and one's up by the Eagles. Okay? In that regard, we are hoping to encourage more walkable, pedestrian-oriented, downtown-like development. At least we want to make that kind of development easier in the areas that have that town center zoning. Will it take? Will people bite? Will they come there? I don't know. You know, that's part of the problem with zoning. Just because you build it doesn't mean they come. So we'll create a path of least resistance for the kinds of development we'd like to see in that town center. Cross our fingers and hope that we get some development that comes in that makes sense and is consistent with that.
Is there any such thing as soliciting certain types of businesses, like, let's get a good restaurant in on 280 somewhere?
Right.
Or, you know, let's get some retail stores instead of warehouses.
Right. The question was, has anybody ever solicited development? And the answer is, heck yes. It's called your economic development department, and that's their job, is to solicit new development, the kind that you'd like to have. Whether or not Mills River has an economic development department, I don't know, but that's a function that some communities have, and the Unified Development Ordinance is one of the best tools at their disposal to telegraph to the development community why they should come to Mills River. Because we're going to support your property values. We're going to give you a place to do a good development that's going to hold its value. We've got a market base that's going to be profitable for you, right? And that stuff's in the DNA of the zoning ordinance, and the development community understands that. It's a good question. Others?
Other questions?
As a mayor of Mills River, I'd just like to say, I've had a few questions been called to me, the weather a little bit here this shoulder. But I'm going to tell you, this is way more than I think we asked for to start with as a council. So I don't want y'all to think that we just overreached here. I've asked around, I don't think anybody had perceived all this rezoning happening at one time. I will say it might be the only time it gets to happen if y'all want it to. But I gotta make sure it's what y'all want. You know, I see a lot of stuff that's in place now that people are glad they're there that I know wouldn't happen if this goes in place. One of the questions that I can remember, I've been asked 15, but I'm going to try to get as many as I can out of people's comments. Could this be challenged by the citizens of Mills River by a signed petition? And if so, how many names would have to be on it?
So, could it be challenged? Absolutely. Would it need to be challenged? I don't know. The elected officials are the ones who make the ultimate decision. So, you know, those are the folks who are going to decide, we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. And I mentioned earlier, you know, we serve at the pleasure of the elected officials. They vote for you. They vote for you. Okay? If the elected officials don't think that what's drafted is good or is beneficial to the town, then it's not something that they wouldn't adopt it. Hopefully, we'll work together and find ways that make them comfortable. But at the end of the day, it is the elected officials who we are trying to, you know, get comfortable with what's being suggested.
Next question. Does the state require UDO in certain size municipalities by population or any sorts of
No state requirement for a unified development ordinance. You do not have to regulate development at all in North Carolina if you choose not to. And there's plenty of local governments that don't.
And I know you guys are complaining about us not reaching out to you. It's hard to get to hold of everybody. We can send these postcards out. We've done it for a lot of other different stuff. Mainly the comprehensive plan. We didn't get a lot of response back like you would think with the postcards. I've won these elections before with less people voted for me than's in this room right now. So come election time, keep that in mind on who you put in these places because they're important people, as you can see. This is not unique. Another thing, the moving these people around in these zones, as they come up and regress with rezoning districts, is there an appeals process for that at any point in time up before we make the decision? How is the council going to handle that?
That's a great question. So, we're drafting this UDO, and part of the UDO is a zoning map. We're making some suggestions about what zoning should be on the ground based on our perception of that, right? And we're not all knowing. We don't live here. You guys do. So you're going to be telling us we agree, we disagree with what you've done. Now, one of the reasons why we're having this meeting tonight, and some of the meetings that we're having in the future, is to talk to you about what has been potentially designated for your property. Do you support it? Do you not support it? What might you support? We want to understand that better. Ultimately, as part of the process, there is a map that is adopted with the UDO. Many communities, and hopefully Mills River will be among them, include a process after adoption where people who own property in the community wish to request a change. Okay? They're allowed to do that in batches. There is no fee. There's still deliberation. It follows the normal process. When you rezone land in North Carolina, there's a process that you have to follow. Okay? That's not me talking, that's the state who says that. Now, the process is you go to planning board, they make a recommendation, you go to the elected officials, they vote. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay? That's the process. That's how this will work, whether it's a UDO adoption or any subsequent change. Our advice is to allow a couple of chances for people to come forward and propose different zoning without having to pay an application fee for consideration through the process based on making Mills River, based on the UDO that's in place, based on the argument that you make to planning board and town council. Now, those of you who get involved in the process and come to these office hour meetings and come to these things and tell us what you think, there's a chance you might not have to do that because you told us, oh, this is the wrong designation, and here's why. And we're open to that discussion. So it's hoped that this process limits the need for people to come in and ask for rezoning. At the same time, we need to be sure that everybody has an opportunity to do that. I told you before, we don't want to change people's uses. What you've got is what you've got. You get to keep it forever. Okay? If you want to change it, then there's some rules that might come into play. Okay? 10 minutes. Okay.
Other questions on this side?
While you've been going through the zoning changes, has your firm looked at deed restrictions on individual pieces of property, and how does the law work on which supersedes? We all know there's deed restrictions on property that require certain things to only be built there, nothing to be built, etc. And how does that impact your big idea?
Great question. Fabulous question. So, all right. Question about deed restrictions. Okay. Generally speaking, deed restrictions control. Okay. What I mean by that is this: if you have deed restrictions on your property that have greater regulation over what can be done, right? Whether it's a conservation protection thing, or it's a limitation on the kind of uses that might be allowed, or it's a design standard provision for your neighborhood, that deed restriction controls over the local government law. But not every time, and here's why. Some deed restrictions are against federal law. Some deed restrictions are against state law. In those instances, state and federal laws trump that deed restriction. Okay? Now, the UDO doesn't get involved in deed restrictions. The town should not be involved in private contracts of which it is not a party. Okay? The town shouldn't be involved in enforcing them, shouldn't be involved in crafting them, and shouldn't be involved in their development. So there's not a lot of relationship between deed restrictions. We would expect deed restrictions and covenants and CCRs to continue to be deployed as part of new development. And that's really the norm and very typical. And Mills River really shouldn't be involved in that unless and until there's a violation of state or federal law. Did that answer your question?
It did, and I've got one more quick question too. For us poor people, you talked about accessory homes. Does that include mobile homes, campers, and RVs? Or does it just include $300 square foot house?
It's a great question. So remember we were talking about this accessory dwelling units. This is a second dwelling unit on the piece of property. And the question was, could that be a manufactured home? Could it be a recreational vehicle? Could it be a tiny home? In many ways, that's up to the elected officials about whether or not they want to allow that. Certainly, we have seen local governments and communities that allow tiny homes to be used as accessory dwelling units. Okay? A tiny home on wheels, in the eyes of the law, is an RV. So, some local governments limit people using recreational vehicles with engines as permanent dwellings. Those same local governments allow movable tiny homes, which have to comply with the rules for recreational vehicles. Whether or not Mills River wants to do that is something that we can discuss. I don't think the desire is to make accessory dwelling units something that's only available for the wealthiest. I think the idea is to make this important way to accommodate additional people, more housing choice, more revenue stream for landowners, to make that as far as possible. The decisions about what form that takes will be part of the process that we work on with the elected officials.
Other questions on this side?
I think we're doing maybe 2 or 3 more. Maybe you guys have another here.
Hi. There's a red area on one of the maps that says community
this project as part of the Making Mills River Comprehensive Plan that was adopted in 21. And community center is one of these districts that talks about what uses the community wants to see in that area in the next 20 plus years. And so if you go in that comprehensive plan and look at that district, it will talk about what types of uses should and should not be there. Our planning board actually amended it earlier this year to strike strike industrial out of that district. Previously, the plan said industrial was encouraged in our community center. That has now changed, but that's the intent of that map.
A couple more questions. Avid hands over here.
Okay, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse on this, but this zoning map and all of this different zoning of everything, and you sitting in your office in Raleigh, and the plan meeting that's doing all this, my question is, again, I'm looking at the light green, the dark green, up on these mountains that we have up here. And there's a lot of scattered houses up there right now, but there's still a lot of undeveloped land. And right now, our town planner has approved 202 houses right next to us on a very low producing mountain of water. So there's not a lot of water up on the mountain. All the wells are 1,000 feet deep.
Right.
What is the city planning doing for that? I thought they were going to get city water.
I can answer that. One, it's not approved, but the developer submitted an application over about a year ago. So as our consultant mentioned, because they submitted their application and it was complete before rules changed, they get to develop under the old rules. And then again, because our current ordinance has very little standards for the mixed-use area and allows 30,000 square foot lots, 0.69 acres per home, you can put 220 homes up the side of Forge Mountain. The intent of moving to these lower density districts is to not only prevent that, but if a property owner wanted to do that, they'd have to go through the rezoning process to council. Right now, if I'm approving something, it's because our local laws say I have to, and that's what I'm bound by.
First of all, I want to thank the mayor for being here. And I do think the plan is thoughtful. I mean, maybe things that people want to change, that's fine. But I just kind of wonder if, we keep on saying that city council's going to decide, which that's very obvious. But it seems like it would be a little more transparent and useful if they were part of the process. And in some way that makes sense, part of the process in front of us. Because we don't know where they stand, and we're going to go through this for all these iterations, and we don't really know kind of where they're leaning. I can just kind of wonder how useful all this.
So, sure, let me answer this one. Well, thank you. The town council, so this process has included within it a series of meetings with town council. Okay? I think there's 6 or 7. Which is not a lot, right? For something this big. Agreed. And your elected officials reached out to staff and us and said, oh my gosh, we're not involved enough in this. We need more information. We need more opportunity to share with you what we think and understand what this says. And in response to that, town staff has created a series of meetings with them to help keep them informed, answer their questions. Our hope is to spend more time with the elected officials, more so than we're under contract to do. Okay? And we do that because we care. So it's hoped that we'll continue to have more interaction with the elected officials, better understanding about where they're coming from. In my experience in Mills River, they seem pretty focused on making sure that you guys are happy. That's at least my experience. I don't know if you share that or not, but that's been my experience. And the questions that they ask us often turn on how will this impact the people who live here. And we don't want to do something that penalizes people, damages their value, or makes their life harder. That's what they told us. Like Mike said, some of these zoning district changes we're trying to put in place because of the conditions that you're in right now. You don't have protections. You don't have a way to protect the character that you want. State laws make that even more difficult. So we're trying to get in, get this taken care of. That's why we're told we're out of time. We're not finished. We're switching gears.
I'll just plug real quick. The town council meetings are the second and fourth Thursday of every month. And to see those meetings and the planning board meetings, go to the town's website, millsriver.gov.
Okay. Earlier I said there were 3 parts to tonight. There was the presentation, yawn fest really, but we're done with that. We did questions, okay? Believe it or not, we spent 45 minutes going over questions, maybe a little bit more. And they were great. And there's probably more questions now than there were when we started. This is a chance for you to speak to Mike directly, speak to myself directly, speak to Karen, speak to town staff, look at the maps. We'll be in here until 8:30, however long it takes. You can probably kick us out, but we'll stay as long as we can. Look at the maps, find out more information about the code. If you still got questions, write it down. All of the answers to the questions that we gave tonight, we will be writing down and putting on the webpage. Every question we get tonight, we will write an answer, and that will be made available to you. Okay? So, please take the time to do that so that everybody can benefit from your question and learn more about the answer. Thank you.